What a win. What a win for the Browns. Unbelievable. I didn't see it coming. You didn't see it coming. But they beat the 49ers. Sensational. We are going to drink in this Victory Tuesday. Get ready for the Colts. Break down in detail how good this Browns defense actually is and what it means moving forward. And a lot of teams on the bye, so we need to get to some fantasy football under the wire, waiver wire pickups. All that and more right now on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Jabba Lubba Hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Wow. I'm so thrilled to be able to do this show. Like, who did any of you actually think that the Browns would win that game? I know we came on the show Sunday and looked ahead, and I will be perfectly honest. I didn't give them a chance in hell because all the way through that game, 100 times out of 100 Browns fans, we watch that game, the kicker makes that field goal, right? We don't get those types of breaks. Browns fans don't get that type of break, but we got it. Officiating, horrendous. Some of the worst I've seen. Calling the face mask on the Browns when it was obviously the 49ers. Then they had to reverse it. Phantom calls this and that. It was really bad. Like it was a really poorly officiated game, really across the league, right? And boy, it doesn't matter though. We got the win. You're 3-2. Such a magnificent difference between 3-2 and 2-3, especially with how close this division is now. Like this AFC, it's totally up for grabs, right? Like, okay, the Jets won, but they're not scaring anybody. The Chargers blew it. Chiefs are obviously still very good, but they look a little bit mortal, as do the Bills. This is right here. You might be getting Deshaun Watson back day to day. That's going to be it, and we'll hopefully find out more Wednesday, Thursday coming up. But PJ Walker did the job, man. XFL MVP PJ Walker did the job. I'm just so thrilled, so riding high, eating the victory pancakes, getting the victory Monday mug up. Let me know how you guys are still feeling. You still riding high? You nervous about Indianapolis? Because we'll get to it. But Gardner Minshew is going to play. Anthony Richardson, the stud rookie for the Colts, he's going to be out for the year likely. Gardner Minshew can beat you. Hey, Gardner Minshew has won games. This guy's a wild man. He doesn't care. He's got jorts. He's wearing bandanas. He's got the Fu Manchu mustache. He doesn't care. Gardner Minshew can beat us, but we got the defense to down him and that whole team. Get your fantasy football questions in using hashtag AskAndy on Twitter at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns, Instagram and TikTok at AndyMCSports. Get those fantasy football questions in. We'll dive in my under the wire waiver wire pickups in a little bit. But I wanted to go to the coach. We've had him on the show multiple times before. Coach Lance is going to jump on. He's a contributor for Cleveland.com, former high school coach with Cleveland. Coach, how you doing, brother?
Andy, thanks for having me.
Hey, welcome. And look, it was funny, we were talking before we came on, and I said, look, as soon as that Browns defense did what it did to Brock Purdy, the previously untouchable, everyone gushing over him, all that, great story, whatever. As soon as I saw what that defense did, I said, I got to get Lance on the show to break this thing down. Because I love how you do the image breakdown. So how are you, man? Are you feeling good about this Browns team?
You know, I am, because I'm a big believer in defense and up front. And both sides of the ball, Browns, even though they've had some injuries with Conklin, they're really good on the defensive line. They're really good on the offensive line. But more importantly, defense travels. And defense, offenses can be inconsistent with weather and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that can happen that can kind of hurt an offense. However, defenses, especially defensive lines, the linebacker, they're really good at all three levels. It's going to travel. They're going to play very well. They're going to be in every game, regardless of who their quarterback is. Obviously, they need to play better to be elite and make a deep run in the playoffs and win the AFC. But that defense is going to keep them in games. I said it late last week. I felt they had a chance just because I knew defensively in all sports, but in football, it's a game of matchups, and the Browns matched up very well personnel-wise against that 49er and scheme-wise against that 49er offense.
It sure did. It did, and the weather helped, of course, and all that. And Like the 49ers lost McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel in game. So what? We were without our Pro Bowl left guard, our $230 million quarterback, without Nick Chubb, all that. So it all worked out and it was great. But let's bring up a few of these images from the defense. Because when we saw this, here's a big thing with this San Francisco offense. And to a certain extent too, Lance, the Browns offense, lots of motion, lots of confusion, lots to make you think. And Jim Schwartz, it was either him or one of the players after said, what was the strategy? It was like, well, we're just not going to move. Like, they can run around all they want. We're not going to expend our energy. We're not going to get all befuddled and bump into each other. We're just not going to move and stand our ground, just like they did in the pregame fight. And it worked. Let's bring up an image here, guys. Let's take a look at some of this here. Okay, take us through this, Lance. Tell us what's
so
going on.
the first thing, when you talk about motion, how they handle motion, they can do it a bunch of different ways. So what they did here was that receiver, Jennings, is actually going to go in motion, and Ward has him man-to-man. Now, this time they're going to bump it. Occasionally in this game, they had Newsome run with motion, but Ward's going to bump it over to McLeod. Now, the thing that happens is that what I really like about Schwartz is that he never bumps speed guys to linebackers or guys. He never creates a matchup for himself that's going to be a problem. The other thing they do, if they have interior motion with tight ends and fullbacks, they will just bump those guys because the second level with Delpit, with JOK, with those guys on the second level, and I don't even consider them linebackers, I just consider them second level players, they can all bump and play man coverage against tight ends and fullbacks. What that does, more importantly, is that you don't lose coverage. But what I really like is that it gives you good run fits. So if it's a guy they can run with, they can bump. Here they bumped. Occasionally they'll run with. But the rules are very simple. So this motion that gives other teams a lot of problem does not give the Browns as much problem because they're in man coverage. So if they're in man coverage, that's my guy. I got him regardless of where he go. And when you watch the film against the Cowboys, for example, they open up such windows against the Cowboys with this motion and this out motion, this cross motion. The Browns kept it very, very simple.
Yeah.
They had an issue. They stayed home. By staying home, you create great run fits. They allow those linebackers to, cover. I always say the Browns linebackers are covering punts. They're cleaning up for the defensive line has created for them. And then the secondary, because they're in man or a form of man with a simple bump here and there, they don't get lost. They don't get caught in picks. They don't get caught in rub routes. And it's just very simple. And here's just a classic example. They motion across. Instead of running across, what they're going to get is they're going to get a bump to McLeod, which is going to allow them to have good run fits. They now have 3 linebackers stayed in the box. Ward is there. He now has the 1 receiver. It's very, very simple. Schwartz is not very complicated. It's not a very hard defense to break down. But what they do is they play with their hair on fire, and they're consistent in what they do. And they have going back to more than just the defense and the slide, they don't back down. They have an identity, and they stick to the identity. And that's kind of what the Browns offense is reaching for, even with Watson coming back. The Browns don't have that problem right now. They know who they are. They know what their strengths are, and they're going to make you beat those strengths. And right now, it's hard to do. They're good defensively. They're good enough to be 5-0 right now.
Amen. Absolutely, they are. And what I love is with this defense, like you said, it's simple. The players have come out and love it. They're not getting confused like last year with all the communication issues. There's no communication issues. Everyone knows their job. And different guys have stepped up. Dalvin Tomlinson had his best game by far as a Brown. Like Lance, he was just penetrate in that middle. It was unstoppable, and that allowed, even though if you look at the stat sheet, it's like, oh, Myles Garrett didn't have the sack. Boy, he caused a lot of turmoil, man. He was hitting Purdy. He was in his face. He was right there, and that opened things up to everybody else. And, of course, MJ Emerson, that may be the best draft pick that Andrew Berry made, because an interception first of the year, that guy is just an unreal corner.
So, yeah, when you look at their defense is, when Schwartz came in, they made a big overhaul on the defensive line. They've made some additions in the secondary. And what they do is they like to have 3 levels. And I don't talk about D-line, linebackers, secondary. With Schwartz, I always believe it's the front line, the second level, and the third level. And the second level guys are so important because they need to be able to play multiple positions. If you can play multiple positions, just like down in front where they have Smith, they've had Akbo, they've had Obo inside. They actually had Tomlinson out at the end a couple of times. So this position flexibility means you have to be simple because you have to play multiple positions, but it allows you to play fast. And I've always been a believer. My dad always taught me this as a coach. If you are thinking, you're not moving. And he's gotten to a point where it's just reactionary. And these guys line up. He finds matchups up front. He allows his linebackers to run. He allows the secondary to cover in man coverage. Sometimes they're in off. Sometimes they're in press. And as you said, everything is simple. And simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means I can play fast. And that's what that defense is doing. If you see what they do, they recreate the line of scrimmage. Those guys are position flexible. They can cover motions. Everything is really simple. And the offense doesn't get to dictate. Jim Schwartz dictates, which is a big difference from what they've been in the past. And that's what's allowing them to be successful right now.
I like that. If you're thinking you're not moving, brilliant. Bring up the next picture if you can there, Sammy. In conversation with Coach Lance Reisland, contributor to Cleveland.com, former high school coach. On Twitter, you can find him Coach Riz and at Lance Reisland, Resland. All right, take us through this. What are we looking at?
Well, this is just, I gave you a couple pictures here of just what they like to do. So this is actually Akbo, number 54. He's at a stand-up 3 technique, and then you have Miles outside. Now, often what they'll do is you'll see JOK in the middle there. They would walk him up on the center, whether he's coming or not, and the center has to account for him. So right now, the center has to account for, JOK if he's coming, which is going to put Obo and Myles Garrett in a one-on-one. And what it does is it creates such issues. You can see there they leave the tight end there to help on Miles, but that's okay because now you have Obo by himself on the left guard. Guards aren't tackles because they can't move as well laterally. If you look on the other side, you have Smith, who's going to be in that wide 5.
Yeah.
The wide 5 causes issue for the right tackle. And what they're going to do is they're not going to read a lot of stuff. They're not going to read the feet. They don't have a ton of rules, especially on third down. What they're doing is they're going to take their gap and they're going to take their gap aggressively. And when you take that aggressively, it allows you to recreate the line of scrimmage. But you can only do that if these guys are flexible. And Obo's undersized, but he's going to go down inside because he understands and he plays with his hair on fire. And Miles can play the linebacker and do different things. So they create these matchups with Smith, Obo, and Miles. And then I always say, then they have Thompson, who's just kind of their anchor in there, who's going to occupy a bunch of people. They have a perfect mix of what Schwartz wants to do. And this is a classic example of a third down where they're going to put Obo on the guard. And this is a tough matchup.
Then you got Zadarius Smith, like you said, on that wide end there. And you mentioned JOK. I gave credit to Tomlinson. How about JOK in that game? Like Lance, this was just everybody was extra bought in and was playing out of their minds. It was brilliant. Like JOK was in the backfield, tackling the quarterback all over the place. He was really that Swiss Army knife weapon that they drafted. And he did such a great job. We had you on last time when the Browns signed Zadarius Smith. And what I like about this defense is it's again, if you try to pay too much attention to one guy, somebody else will get you. But Zadarius Smith, not from a numbers standpoint, what I think a lot of us were expecting. Are you pleased, disappointed, inconclusive about what Smith has done so far?
No, because I think it's a part of a whole, right? And when you look at JOK, I'll give you an example because I'm not an anti-Woods, DC last year. It's just his scheme. I don't think necessarily fit the style of what these guys do well. So when you say JOK is playing well, it's just last year he had a lot more rules, and a lot of linebackers in different schemes have a lot of rules. He now doesn't have a lot of rules. He's got a gap. But though instead of reading a double team and deciding where it's going, he's just taking the gap. So instead of reading 2 gaps, he's just taking a gap, which allows him to be instinctual, what allows him to play fast. Again, not thinking, not worried about what the scheme is necessarily, and allows him to freelance a little bit and make plays and do what he does best in space. And things like screens, when you think all that, that's because he's in man coverage. He doesn't have to worry about a zone as much. So there's just style-wise, the scheme really, really matches up with the style and traits of these defensive players. And Zadarius Smith has done a ton in terms of getting people open. He's the one, in my opinion, he hit Purdy early on an inside stunt. He allows you to run stunts because he's big enough to play that 3 technique and hold up in there against the run. He can run stunts. He can play with Miles. He can play with Obo. He can play with Thompson. So his flexibility is exactly what the Browns are looking for. And to me, one of the most overrated stats in football is sacks. And people are always like, you're crazy. I just don't believe in sacks. I believe in pressure. And Smith and Obo, these guys get pressure and they get quarterback hits. And when you saw Purdy, those quarterbacks aren't afraid, but Purdy's clock was sped up. And when your clock is sped up, you don't get to go through those progressions as well. And that's what the Browns are doing. They're speeding up the clocks of these quarterbacks, which makes them throw the ball early, throw the ball late, get rid of it, and maybe not get you to the third read. And Smith is one of those contributors. So, no, his numbers aren't great, but what he's doing is exactly what Schwartz wants.
No, we saw that because of the wet ball, him and Purdy have to rush. The ball squirt out, right? Just pop up in the air, a little magic trick. Let's bring up another picture here on the defense to take a look and really start to now pivot, Lance, after we looked at what this means towards the Browns playing the Colts. So we got the three circles here.
So you're going to have a DT on the center here. You're going to have Myles Garrett standing up on the guard, and you're going to have Smith now on the outside. And this is part of this flexibility. And now, because they have confidence in what they do, they actually have Martin Emerson. He's got the wing in man coverage, or the back in man coverage, but they're going to move him up to the line of scrimmage, which gives him great run fits, which gives him great run support. But what they've done by covering that center, by having Myles in that B gap, and having Smith outside, you've created one-on-ones for all three of those guys. So if you look on the right side, they're a little weak because they're in a wide 5 and a wide 3, but that's okay. That's what the matchups on third down is, what they're trying to get. And because they rally to the ball and because they have so many people down in the box, they're able to account for different gaps they leave open. But this is a great example of the matchup Jim Schwartz wants to create. The first circle, you got the guy in the center. Center's got to slide to him. The right guard's got to slide to Myles. The right tackle's got to slide. Slide to Smith outside. Right. Now, if the back blocks, they can even bring Martin Emerson if they want. So they've now dictated what they want. They're not waiting for the defense, and they're dictating. And these are when you get the big hits. This is when they sped up his clock. This is what Jim Schwartz does, and this is another idea of this position flexibility that allows him to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, definitely. And you see Thornhill at the top of the screen there. He can get that full field vision, direct traffic back there as well. And I just can't get over how good MJ Emerson has done to go along with Ward and Newsome and Grant Delpit as well overall in the year. I think we got one more picture here to go through. Let's pop that up here. Okay, here we are. Now let's break this down.
This is going to be from earlier. This is during the preseason against KC. So this is what you constantly see. If you look at the black line is the line of scrimmage. The yellow line that I've made through the 1st and 10 by the big yellow box where it says Browns defensive line recreates the line of scrimmage. You're going to see this is where they're at on every snap. So on every snap, they're not waiting for doubles. They're not waiting for reaches. They're not waiting for down blocks. They are dictating by blowing these gaps. And that's why you have a guy like Jordan Elliott and Alex Wright. These guys are playing at a much higher level because their rules are a lot simpler. And when your rules are a lot simpler, you can rely on your talent a little bit more because you're not thinking. And these guys in the NFL, they want to do it right. So they constantly think about what their job is. Well, Schwartz has made their job get upfield and cause chaos. And you can see this is how every play starts. So it's always 3 yards. So by the time they're in pass protection or the run scheme is started, the Browns defensive line is 3 yards in the backfield. This allows the offensive line has to account for them, and it allows that second level of linebackers, JOK and those guys, to run around and make plays because they're worried about the penetrating guys. Now, because they're penetrating, now the secondary knows they're all sped up. So this is the idea of the secondary is marrying with the defensive line, the linebackers. They're all working together in unison. The secondary knows pressure's coming, so they can be tight and man. And they can take away those hot routes, those slants, those hitches, and things like that. So it's all working together. This is just, to me, this is their number one thing that Jim Schwartz has brought to the, he's covered motions. He does a lot of different things, right. But this is his number one thing. They recreate the line of scrimmage backwards every snap.
Absolutely love it. There's a preseason example. We saw it in full display against the 49ers and for the most part all year. Now, Lance, what does this mean for the Colts game coming up right now? Because, okay, Anthony Richardson gone for the year, rookie QB, lots of talent, but I saw some people, we played Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew can beat you. Like I said off the top, Gardner Minshew can beat you if you give him time. If you pressure and rush Gardner Minshew, you can create chaos for him and that offense because he gets a little flighty and freelances. For the Schwartz defense, is this something where going into the Colts, while you obviously game plan per individual and per team, is it a case more where they're just going to try to, like you said, keep it simple? It's like, we're going to do similar stuff to this, try to pressure Minshew, try to make him make mistakes. And like you said, dictate, you're not going to tell us what we're going to do. We're going to tell you what we're going to do, and you have to adjust the offense.
Well, one of the things you get with a defense like this, or an offense that runs the same schemes, the old wing T or run and shoot, things like that, is that you're not really worried about what the opponent does. And what that does for me as a coach, it allows you to rep it. So regardless, they're always going to game plan for players. They got a couple good receivers. Moss is a good back. Taylor, all these kind of Minshew threw for 329 yards last week. He's a gunslinger, so he's going to take chances. But what it does is the Browns don't care who they play. Jim Schwartz doesn't care who they play. They're pros, so they're working on it, but they're doing what they do. So instead of saying, we need to stop this, for months now, they've been working on what they do, penetrating, covering man. So they're getting more reps. And in the NFL, in college, in high school, you win with reps. You don't win with anything else. You win with what you do and how many times you do it. And that's what the Browns are doing. So right now they know that, they're going to say, let's get Gardner Minshew off his spot. Let's make sure we stop Moss if Taylor comes back. They have a couple good receivers.
Pittman.
Yeah, they're a couple good. Pittman's really good at over 100 last week. So they do some. They're going to do. Obviously, the NFL. There's only so many things you do at any levels of football, but the Browns are more worried about themselves defensively. Now, I would say the big factor for anybody, I don't care how, is that was the game no one thought they could win. They're coming off this high where they were grown men and they were told they had no chance. So you're a grown man. You're told you have no chance. Now you have to come back down to reality, and this is the next step for the Browns in terms of being mature. Making sure you practice well, make sure you heal your body, make sure you rest, make sure the work days you're working really hard. And this is a team you should beat now. But last week you can go the 49ers. If you're having this interview with, the 49ers people, they're saying there's no way we should lose to the Browns. These are NFL players who are really good, who can make plays, and you have to plan accordingly. Now, this is a game they should win, but they got to get back on track because that was a big emotional win. And sometimes that's hard to do with young people, is to get them back on track after a big win.
You can't have that letdown. We've seen it too many times over the years, Lance. Too many times. You're up. They read their clippings. They read their media, social media. Everyone loves them. Crashing back down. Is this a different year? Is this a different mindset? I think for the defense, it certainly is, because, you're right. It's going to be the Colts now, and their coaches are going to be telling them, no one thinks you can beat this defense. No, et cetera, blah, 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 and coming in. What I loved, Coach Stefanski gave the players 2 days off. Who was in on Monday? Who was in day one on the day off? It was the defense. The defense came in. That tells you all you need to know there on the day off.
Well, the one thing about Stefanski, I being down there and seeing him in his interview and see what he does, is that he's perfect in terms of preparation. And I've always enjoyed his practices, and people are upset with some of the things he do, but he prepares well, and he prepares what he does. And, the plays they set up with the touchdown run, and they use some traps and whamps and different blocking schemes that they haven't used against the 49ers and things like that. But he never gets too high and never gets too low, which is good, because when the wheels are falling off and everybody's losing their mind, they're the same at practice, and people get mad because they want to see emotion. But the good thing is he's not going to get too high either. So when they come to practice tomorrow, they're going to be back to business and back to work. And that's what's good about having him in charge, in my opinion, is that he's not an emotional guy. There's other guys. Schwartz is emotional. There's other players that are emotional. He's the CEO. He's the boss. He's got to be in charge. He's got to make sure that his team is ready to play, and guys are ready to play mentally and physically. And win or lose, he goes back to work. And that's what I like about him, because he sounded the same after this big win as he did after a really, really bad loss to the Steelers, you know what I'm saying? So against the Ravens. So that's what I like, is they're going to go back to work. And he does. If you go out to their practices, they're super organized and they get after it. So I have no doubts they'll be ready. It's just emotionally, can they get back up after a big win?
Can they rise up? Weather won't be a problem. It's in Indianapolis, inside. Deshaun Watson, will he be back? That's going to be the question. But boy, man, this defense is absolutely special. Lance, tell people where they can find you. We always love having you on with the insights, with the diagrams, breaking it down for us.
You can just find me at Twitter. It's just at Lance Reisland, LanceReisland. Same with Instagram. It's just at Lance Reisland. Again, LanceReisland.
All right, Coach. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
As always, thanks for having me. We'll see you soon.
All right. There he goes. Coach Lance Reisland. I love those details, the minutia breaking down. How, not just Browns won, that's great, but how, why did they win? And what I love, again, is it's not overly complicated, right? It's simple. It's that old Belichick thing. Do your job. Sounds cliche, it is, but it's cliche for a reason, because it works. It works. So against the Colts, I'm not going to be old, fearful Browns fan here. I think defensively, for sure, Schwartz is going to have these guys absolutely ready. He's going to have these guys absolutely ready and say, hey, you know what? Now, that signature win, you got to follow that up. And the offense, PJ Walker, man, it wasn't pretty, but bravo. He did it. 5-3 as a starter. I don't care if his quarterback rating was 45.9 or whatever the heck. Who cares? You won. You almost lost it, giving away that almost interception in the fourth quarter. And I got some messages, people blaming Stefanski. For those of you who haven't seen that fourth quarter where he bootlegged out, threw it across his body, and it was nearly picked. That was not Stefanski. PJ Walker came back to the sideline, apologized, and Stefanski said afterwards that, hey, he wasn't supposed to throw the ball. That was a bootleg out and run. And he got a little carried away and did it, and the Browns got a break and got away with it. So don't look, I'll jump on Stefanski as much as the next guy, but don't bury him on that one. Went for the punt, was conservative. Again, that adaptation, using what you have to do to win. Can it be consistent? Will we see that against the Colts and that Gardner Minshew? I think what you got to do, you got to rattle them early. You got to try to pull away if you can. And again, that depends on one, if Watson comes back, and two, what Watson are we getting? Because when I was at that game in Tennessee, he looked real good come the second quarter. Real good. Does he step back? He hasn't practiced in 20-something days. We're talking about knocking off the rust. Well, is more rust put back on? What do we see? That's going to be the question. But you have the talent. There's no excuse to lose this game. There's no excuse to lose this game if you're the Browns. You need to win this game. This division, the Ravens are on the precipice of pulling away. You have to keep pace. You have to win. You have to keep pace. This next chunk of games are critical. You can win this. Okay, you can win this. All right. I'm going to enjoy this until Sunday. And then, Sunday morning live, 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll break down the Browns-Colts game a little bit more in detail. We'll have updates at that point, of course, on the health of whether it's Joe Bitonio, Watson, etc., and go there. Also, tip of the cap, dog bone to Dustin Hopkins. Okay? How often do we yell about the kicker? No one's in the doghouse. You beat the 49ers, no doghouse today, no doghouse. Dog bones go to Dustin Hopkins, PJ Walker, and the whole Browns defense. Hopkins in weather game. I was nervous. He had said when he came in, he's like, oh, Cleveland's a bad place. And on Phil Dawson Day, where he came in and smashed the guitar off the top, field goal kickers made the difference. Positively for the Browns, negatively for the 49ers. But Hopkins looking rock solid, man. You got to keep it rolling. Special teams defense carrying their load. Can the offense carry theirs? Okay, you know what? Fantasy football time. 6 teams on bye week hell for fantasy football owners. Let's get down to the wire. All right, this is not pretty when it comes to fantasy football this week, guys. Okay, this is not an ideal situation. Look at some of the names, and I'm sure, just like I did, when you go to your fantasy team on a Tuesday and the week has readjusted and reset, and you're reminded that the teams on bye this week in bye week hell: the Bengals, Cowboys, Titans, Jets, Panthers, Texans. 6 teams. Some hurt more than others, but 6 teams are off. It's going to be an aggressive waiver wire week for people trying to backfill. And this is why it goes back to drafting. You have to pay attention to your bye week. You don't want to be caught in a week 7 hole, week 9, whatever. And I got to tell you, the waiver wire, it is thin. It is thin. You got your fantasy football questions, get them in using hashtag AskAndy on Twitter, at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns. Make sure you click notifications, right up there. Click notification. Get some of our sweet Sick Podcast gear, fantasy football and Browns gear. Link is below. And when we're looking all around, I got to start with running back. Jordan Mason of the 49ers. We just saw the 49ers, right? Christian McCaffrey, oblique injury. Again, this is where we got to be tracking everything. And Deebo Samuel out. If McCaffrey is severely limited or out, Mason, not Elijah Mitchell. I got several tweets at AndyMC81, hashtag AskAndy. Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. Who do I get off of waivers? Well, Jordan Mason rushing touchdowns in back-to-back games, including the one versus the Browns. Getting first dibs when McCaffrey went down makes Mason the running back to add over Elijah Mitchell. That's the reason. We're seeing more explosiveness. We're seeing confidence. We're seeing him find the end zone. I don't care if it was a garbage touchdown a couple of weeks ago. He got in. So 6% rostered is Jordan Mason. So he's there. Question is, how much fab do you spend? I wouldn't go crazy, unless you are like in true running back peril and you don't got anybody. Because McCaffrey, this is not going to be a long-term, apparently, injury for McCaffrey. So, and you can always get a bit of a mix of Mitchell. We know Shanahan can be weird and pop people in and out, but especially if Deebo misses time, you're going to get more opportunity. So Jordan Mason. After that, we look to the Rams. Kyron Williams looks like he's going to miss probably one game. Bit of an ankle, but it's one, and it comes at a bad time at the bye, and maybe more. Zach Evans, Royce Freeman, they're hosting the Steelers. So one, I don't love either of these guys. And two, you play the Pittsburgh defense. So Zach Evans, 6th-round rookie, played 6 offensive snaps. 6. Not a big body of work. Royce Freeman, journeyman guy. He flashed at times in Denver, but the reason he's coming off the practice squad is because he's not very good. He's not a great running back. This has committee written all over it. There's also second stringer Ronnie Rivers, injured PCL in the knee. He is doubtful. So does he play? If you have to get one, I would say Zach Evans. I would say you go with Zach Evans. I think 1% rostered. This could very well, you got to track this up. This could very well prove to be a non-starter. If a Kendre Miller for the Saints is available, that's someone to take a look at. And how about old Zeke Elliott? Ezekiel Elliott of the Patriots, 43% rostered, hosting Buffalo. Stevenson injured. We saw his uptick in workload happen, did Elliott's. First touchdown as a Patriot last week. Got the extra work the week before, hauled in 4 passes. We're seeing that bit of a corporation. You were obviously the ceiling, like you were bumping your head on this ceiling because the Patriots offense sucks. Like this is a horrible offense. I don't have to tell you. Right? There is not a lot of meat on the fantasy bone here. Real life, fantasy-wise, nothing. But you look at what Ezekiel could do if getting a sizable increase in workload, makes him a fringe RB2 and flex player. And with these bye weeks, man, like you might not have a choice. If you miss out on Jordan Mason, at least if Stevenson doesn't play, and again, we won't fully know that for a few days, so you have to be proactive. At least Zeke, he's done it. He's not the guy he used to be, but they can lean on him a bit. So Zeke Elliott, a nice ad. My favorite ad of the week is going to be at tight end. Jonnu Smith. Remember Jonnu Smith? He's with the Titans. Was it Patriots last year? Whatever. Now he's with the Falcons, 19% rostered. And who would have thought Jonnu Smith, not Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith is the tight end to own on that Falcons team. And Desmond Ridder as well. If you're real desperate for a quarterback, he is not good. He is no. Last 2 weeks, though. Last week, 19 fantasy points. Week before, over 20. Could be ugly, but might be a play. They're at Tampa Bay. Might be a play if you are super desperate for a quarterback. In one of my leagues, I kind of am, and I might be going Desmond Ridder as my second in a 2 QB league. I may be going that way. We'll see. But look at Jonnu Smith. So 3 consecutive weeks of double-digit fantasy points in PPR. 15.5, 13.7, 14.6, and receptions 6, 6, and 4. And only in the last game did he get a touchdown. So why is this important? It's because you look at those fantasy points I just outlined. You have guys who need 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 1 fluky run to get those. Only 1 touchdown over that stretch for Jonnu Smith. That means he can be self-sufficient and isn't touchdown dependent. Those can be bonuses. That's what makes him viable. So when I'm looking at that, it seems, again, crazy to think Smith over Pitts, but it's Pitts who's not putting up the numbers. Smith is in that offense. And that makes him probably my favorite play of this week. If you need to add in, you could be looking at him for a flex if you're in trouble, whatever it might be. So let's pull up a lot of the questions were tight end. They were kind of general questions, just overall. So kind of lump them together. But let's pull up a tweet here, see what we got right there. Yeah, from Brent at Breakson44. Andy, should we take Browns in suicide pool this week? Watson might be back. Thanks. Interesting question. We don't get a lot of those suicide pool ones. And this is tricky because you're week 7. You probably used up some of the obvious ones. And if you made it through, hopefully you didn't get zinged on picking the 49ers or Eagles, because both those games look like they probably should have been gimmies. Brown's first third-string quarterback ever to win on his first start in expansion era. 12 had done it before. PJ Walker got it done. Just saying. Good for him. I think it's a play where, depending what the other options are, so I'd say, okay, what are the other team options? This is a game the Browns should win against the Colts. We've seen them have major letdowns before. Absolutely. They should win it. You know what? I'm feeling good. I say yes. Roll with the Browns on it. Why not? Right? Why not? Let's do this thing. Let's go with the Browns against the Colts. Got a question in here from on Twitter using hashtag AskAndy at AndyMC81 at SickPodBrowns from at TWolf1979. Let's see. Is DJ Moore a valid play with Justin Fields out this week? Interesting question. That's tough. And in a bye week where you have 6 teams out, you probably don't have a better option. Now, let's just take a little gander here because Justin Fields, who fantasy-wise was looking real good, right? He was running. He was improving. The record at 1-5 isn't what you want it to be. But now if you're the Bears, you have second up Tyson Bagent and third Nathan Peterman. How's that guy still in the league? Nathan Peterman's arguably the worst NFL quarterback I've ever seen. Just, I don't get it. I don't get it. He's worse than Mac Jones, and Mac Jones is not good. He's worse than Bailey Zappi. You're going to be capped big time. But the issue could be sometimes these third, fourth string guys find their third, fourth string targets that they practice with all the time. Otherwise, they try to funnel the ball to the man. DJ Moore's that man. I think you still go with DJ Moore. You temper your expectations, but you probably don't have a better choice. Let's see. Thunderwolf asking on Twitter, in a loaded team bye week, how far in advance should you plan for it? That's a good question. I think you start planning for it really at your draft. You try not to double yourself up too much on these. You got to keep looking ahead and look ahead before other people are going to look ahead. So if you have a team 2 weeks out and you know you're going to be really light at tight end or running back, let's say tight end, for example. Well, maybe this is the week you'd go get Jonnu Smith, who I just talked about. Bench him, park him, use him, whatever. You're going to have him ready. Try to prep ahead a couple of weeks there. So, and kickers, if you need any kickers because of the bye week, Brett Mayer of the Rams and Dustin Hopkins of the Browns, 2 best kickers available at under 50% ownership. So you can take a look there. And of course, folks, hey, you know what? The NFL season is going strong. DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking up new customers with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. 5 for $200. Come on. DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. So you bet, you sign up, you get a sweetener deal. So don't get that anywhere else, right? You use code SICKSPORTS. Get in the game day. Get into the greatness of DraftKings Sportsbook now. Download the app. Use code SICKSPORTS, and that's where, again, you score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. Use code SICKSPORTS. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? You call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. Use code SICKSPORTS. Folks, let's keep riding this high, man. Let's keep feeling good. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep riding. And let's go in to Indianapolis and jack it up 4. Let's get into win number 4. Okay? Let's get 4 and let's keep stacking. No more old Browns. No more, we're feeling good about ourselves and we're going to crash and burn. You go put the boots to that mustache, bandana, jort wearing, Baker Mayfield wannabe lookalike a Gardner Minshew. Okay? You go get him. We can do it. The defense can, and we'll hopefully have Deshaun Watson back and see what that offense looks like. Still TBD on expectations there. Thank you so much to Coach Lance Reisland. Always love having him on. Make sure you click notifications, follow, share. Get us on Twitter, X, at AndyMC81, at SickPodBrowns. Hashtag AskAndy for fantasy football. Instagram and TikTok at AndyMCSports. Check the links below as well. Lots of fun stuff there. All right. For Sammy, for Lance, I'm Andy. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. And as always, go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.